All right. Hi, everyone. Good evening. I hope you are able to see my screen. Let me know in the chat box if it is visible. Cool. Okay. Yeah. Is my screen visible, everyone? So, okay, today we are going to start. Basically, we'll discuss about roadmap to DSA, right? Why is DSA important, and how should you go ahead and prepare for DSA? What are all the topics that are necessary for your interviews, and what all topics should you consider while preparing for companies, whichever is your dream company. So we'll discuss that topic by topic. I'll give you um, a basic insight on what these topics are and how can you start preparing for those. So that is the plan for today. And towards the end, I'll also open the session for Q&A. You can ask me whatever questions you have, whatever doubts you have, so we can do that. All right, so let's begin. Just a second, let me see if my screen is visible. Yeah, it is visible, right? Okay, great. So first of all, let's start with who am I, right? Why should I be telling you what is DSA and why should you prepare for that? Right, so my name is Parv. I'm a software engineer at Google. I have previously interned with Amazon and Microsoft. And one thing which I felt common in all the interviews, right? In all these companies' interviews was that all of them really focus on problem solving, right? And problem solving is something that is what you as a software engineer will do in day-to-day life. Whatever, wherever you are working, does not matter. Whatever profile you are working in, does not matter. What is important in that job is basically problem solving, right? Is your product or whatever you're doing, is it solving a problem for a customer? And if yes, then you will try to solve that problem in the most optimized way, right? Apart from this, the last point is basically that I have graduated from BITS Pilani in computer science. So that's about me, right? Let's get started with DSA. So the first thing is why DSA? Why is DSA important? Correct. And what is DSA then? So as I was mentioning about problem solving, so problem solving is very important as I was just saying that. So one way of these companies, right, whatever companies you're going to interview with, one way of them analyzing you or judging you based on your problem solving skills is DSA. That is data structures and algorithms. Correct. So what generally happens is they want a standardized way based on which they can judge you, based on which they can uh, categorize you and figure out whether you're a good candidate or a good fit for their company or not. And that is DSA, which is data structures and algorithms, right? That is the standard procedure which these companies follow. So what is it? So data structures algorithms is basically a subject or a topic which involves programming the logic, right? Which involves solving problems through computer algorithms, right? Through computer programming. That is what data structures and algorithms are. So data structures means the way you store your data in the program, and algorithms are basically the techniques by which you solve the problem, right? This is what data structures and algorithms mean. So the first step, right? Step by step, we are going to see this. So the first step will be to choose a programming language, because there are a lot of programming languages. You will be able to see that I think there are more than what 800, 900, I don't know, programming languages in the world. So your first step is to decide which programming language do you want to code in, right? And generally, if someone is starting in today's today, so I would recommend that person to start with Java or C++, because these are the most famous programming languages. You will be able to find most of the resources in them. Apart from that, they have a very large community, right? So whenever you are stuck, you will be able to find the solution and will be able to implement that. So that is very important, correct? So C++ and Java are the most common choices, but other choices can include JavaScript, Python, Rust, Go, C, right? So these are some of the programming languages which are commonly used. But again, Java and C++ for someone who is starting today, that is what I would recommend. So the first step is choose a programming language, do your research, right? Go to YouTube and see which programming language do you feel more comfortable with, and then start off, correct? So the first step is choosing a programming language. Then the second step is to start off with the fundamentals. And when I say fundamentals, the here also I can divide this step in two steps, which is the first step is the fundamentals of programming language, right? Which is the step one. So you choose a programming language, then try to go through the basic syntax of it, right? What is the basic syntax? Like, how do you code in that? What is the syntax which you use in day-to-day life when you program in that language, right? That is what you have in this step as well. So step one will involve getting to know the programming language, getting the basic syntax, which is basically using for loops, while loops, right? For someone who is new, all of them are jargon. But what I'm saying is basically like a baby, right? So you are like a baby in this field. You first choose your mother tongue, right? So when a baby is born, how does he or she learn to speak? So in a similar way, we are going to learn a programming language. We decide, right? Our mother, basically, whatever our mother tongue is, we see that, and then we learn the basic, basic dialogues in that language. Similarly, here, when you choose a programming language, you need to learn the basic syntax, right? So that is the correlation you can say that since you are the baby in this field, you have to learn a programming language with which you can communicate, right? So for this, the resources can be YouTube, right? Learning the basics of a programming language can be done through YouTube. That is the best resource I can recommend, because nowadays I think there are a lot of resources, good resources, which you can find. For example, if you want to learn C++, just go on YouTube and search for learn C++, right? There are courses, step-by-step courses, which can guide you through that, right? This was not the case, let's say 5 to 6 years ago, but in today's world, this YouTube is a very good platform for you to begin, right? At least you will be able to figure out whether which programming language will suit you, right? Because this is a free content, you don't have to pay it, you just have to sit and then figure out which programming language suits you the best, correct? Okay, then the next step we have is, once you are comfortable with the programming language, once you know which programming language to choose and which one will you code, right? Then you move on to the fundamentals of DSA. You start off with data structures and algorithms. And what are those basically? Again, as I mentioned, data structures tell you the way how will you store and manipulate data in the code. And algorithm is basically something like, see, computer is brainless, right? It does not have a brain of its own. Whatever the programmer tells it, it will perform that. So right now, if you are attending this, right? So I can give you a basic example of a robot. So if you tell the robot, make the tea, robot will not be able to do that, right? Since it does not have a brain of its own. So what happens is we have to tell step-by-step procedure to the robot, and then it will be able to perform that operation, right? We need to tell the robot, go and first take a pan in which you will make the tea, right? Then the next step can be, in that pan, you put that on the stove, right? Because you have to start boiling the water. So third step can be put the water and boil it, right? And then you can break down this algorithm of making the tea into small steps, right? This is similar to what we do in programming. We have a bigger problem in which we have to tell how to solve this problem. We need to tell computer to do that, right? And why are we using computer for that? The reason for that is very simple, because in certain calculations, like mathematical calculations, computer are really fast, right? Computer are faster than humans, that we can definitely know. So you can add thousands of number within just a second, right? But humans cannot do that. So in certain scenarios, computers are way much faster. That is why we use the computer to solve our problems, right? So that is why we study about data structures algorithms to basically be able to solve basic problems using computer algorithms. Correct. So coming to step two, you have to learn the fundamentals, right? You need to start from fundamentals, which is arrays. So this is the basic data structure. When you learn about it, that is going to be the first thing that you're going to learn, right? So arrays is something that is very important. That is going to be your foundation of DSA. So you have to focus on this, right? I'll share the slides after this. We'll add it into the description so you can access it. But make sure that you follow this step by step, right? So in arrays, there are some algorithms which I've listed here, which when you learn about it, you will be able to see that these are the algorithms which are very important, right? There's cadence algorithm, there is DNF, multi-dimensional array. So these are the topics, right, which you should focus while you are learning DSA, right? So the first step is arrays. Then moving on to the next topic is very important again, strings. So I am not sure how many people in this um, live stream are aware about strings. So let me see. You can write yes in the chat box if you're aware about these basic data structures. Okay. So I see a lot of people are aware, right? A lot of people are aware about strings, arrays. So in strings, so people who are aware, right? So for a lot of people who are beginning, who are very new to this, these all are jargons to you, right? You will not be able to understand what I'm talking about. But make sure that you note down somewhere. These are the topics and step by step which you should learn, right? So you should follow this list of topics step by step so that you don't get stuck anywhere, right? Because DSA is very large, right? The topics are very huge. You cannot cover this, and I cannot specifically tell you that do this, that then you will be able to crack a company. That is not possible, right? But if you follow the steps, the journey will become easier for you. Correct. So the second topic can be string. So in string, we have string manipulation, like how do you play around with strings, how do you play with substrings, and how do you compare strings, right? That is very important. So lexicographical comparison is a topic which you need to study about. So whenever you are studying strings, just make sure that you study about these topics at least, right? You focus on them so that you are well prepared when you go to the next steps. Correct. So this is about strings. Then we have in the fundamentals, there's a technique, and this is a very famous technique which is called recursion and backtracking. Correct. So I have seen, since I've taught a lot of people, um, so I have seen a lot of people getting stuck in this step. Recursion and backtracking, right? This step is very confusing to, initially it is very confusing to a lot of people, right? But once these people are able to get a hang of it, once they are comfortable with the recursion, this is the easiest thing which you can learn, right? Once you get the basics and the fundamentals correct, recursion is going to be your savior in every other scenario, right? If you can use recursion, so that will be your um, go-to technique or go-to choice. Correct. So recursion is something you should focus on whenever you're learning, right? So if you have started already, I would recommend that you go through recursion and backtracking problems. You learn about how are we going to solve this problem using recursion, and make sure that you understand how is it working, right? So this step is very important. Do not skip it. A lot of people, because they get confused in recursion, skip this step. So I would recommend you not doing that. Correct. So after recursion and backtracking, you go to sorting. So there are some sorting algorithms which I've listed here. So for example, you have bubble sort, selection sort, insertion sort, merge sort, and quick sort. So these are very important in terms of interviews. Like anyone, if you know DSA, right, I will assume that you are aware about sorting algorithms. And this is very important. So you should technically again focus on this and make sure you understand what is happening. Make sure you understand how to code these sorting algorithms. Right. So after sorting, we have two more topics in fundamentals, which is searching and object-oriented programming. Right. So searching, for example, if I give you an example of searching, consider this thing, right? When you search in your phone, when you search on Google, all of them have some searching algorithms, right? So in WhatsApp also there is a feature to search some messages, correct? So searching is again very, very important because in real life it has many applications. So you should focus as well as try to correlate with real life, right? If, for example, if we have binary search, which is again very important in searching, so how can you correlate it with real life? How can you correlate it with the dictionary, right? The way you search in a dictionary. So these are small, small things you should make sure when you're learning about searching, you should focus on, right? Next thing is again, this is something as I mentioned, recursion. If you remember, I mentioned that the people face difficulty in recursion, right? People find it difficult to understand. Similar thing happens in object-oriented programming, correct? So object-oriented programming is, you can say, the pillar of software industry. I cannot emphasize more on this, right? For someone who is new, it is not very clear why are we learning this? Why do we need object-oriented programming? But whenever you begin your job and whenever you go to the software industry, you will realize that there is nothing without object-oriented programming, right? Because the code which, like for example, if you go and check code for an application, Android application, it might have it can have around 50,000 to 1 lakh lines of code, right? A small application has so much code and it is very difficult to maintain it. Therefore there comes the object oriented programming. So you should focus on this because, again, as I mentioned, in interviews uh, you are expected to know the fundamentals at least, right? So we have the four pillars of object oriented programming, which is OOPS, right? So we say these four pillars are very important. So everyone who is learning OOPS should learn these, right? Inheritance, abstraction, polymorphism, encapsulation. So you should note it down whenever you start with object-oriented programming. Just go through them, right? And to learn about all these, right, the fundamentals of DSA, there are various platforms, there are various coding channels on YouTube. If you want to learn for free, you can definitely find some good resources, right? And also you can try out multiple approaches. So if YouTube is not a good choice for you, then you can definitely try out different courses on different platforms. Whatever works for you, I would suggest that you follow that. Wherever you feel confident, do that, right? So I would just take a pause here till the fundamentals. I would uh, open the session for a questions for 5 minutes, and then we can move ahead to the intermediate step. So if you have any questions till now, you can ask to me in the chat box. I'll be more than happy to answer. So there's a question in the chat box, which is, can we choose Python? Yes, you can choose Python, right? But if you are a beginner, if you already know Python, then you can go ahead and learn DSA in that. But if you're a complete beginner starting off, then I would recommend you to choose either C++ or Java. Only DSA is good for Java. See, if someone asks me this question, that is DSA the only thing that you should do? The answer is no, right? Because you should also focus on some development. Because at the end of the day, when you go to the industry, what are you going to build? You are actually going to build some real life softwares, which will involve development, right? So DSA is not the only thing you should do, but it is the first step. It is the fundamental that you should know. Sir, I'm from arts background. Can I get an SD job? See, it is possible, right? So you can contact AccioJob for this, but if I remember, there are people in AccioJob which were from different backgrounds, not from did not do BTech, and they have got a software job. So definitely you can do. AccioJob will teach you DSA in Java. So if that is the question, so you can definitely go with Java. So there is a question about how much DSA should we know for interviews. So I'll cover all the topics, right? So at least I'll come to that point as well, but at least till the intermediate part, right? This is the fundamentals which I've discussed till now. I'll come to the next thing, which is the intermediate, right? So at least till intermediate, you should be very confident. That is the bare minimum you should know. Okay, so there's a question which programming language did I use while I was learning DSA? So I used C++, right? And right now, I code both whenever I'm trying to solve a DSA question, then I try to solve both in C++ and Java. So, but yeah, when I started off with C++ because that was something I already knew. Therefore, I chose that. So Java or Python, which is more important? Um, both of them are used for different fields, right? Both of them have different applications or different use cases. So when I say Python, right, most of the um, if you go and check where is it used, right? So Python is majorly used in data science and ML field, right? So whenever you are trying to do something in that field, something related to data science, ML, then you use Python. But Java has been there for, I don't know, since the start of software industry at least. So I cannot say that Java is better or Python is better, but if you're starting off with DSA, then I would recommend you to choose Java. So if someone is familiar with basics of C++, Java and Python, all of them, which language is recommended for DSA? So then I would suggest you to, if you are aware about all the languages, if you know the basics, then I would suggest you to go with Java because generally a lot of like you can say a lot of the companies have some projects in Java, right? So whenever you go and start your job, you will encounter some code which is written in Java. So the probability of you using Java in your job is very high. So Java is the go-to language. Okay, so the last question, I'll just take one more question and then I'll go to the next step, which is the intermediate step. I am so the question is, I am from a non-IT background and I know the basics of Java. How much time to learn DSA? How much time will it take to learn DSA if I can give 3 to 4 hours every day? See, this is totally dependent on you. So if you can give 3 to 4 hours per day and you know the basics of Java, then at least 4 months to complete the whole thing, right? Starting from the fundamentals of DSA, going to the intermediate step, and then going to the final step, which is the advanced DSA. At least 4 months when you can give 3 to 4 hours every day, because there are a lot of things, right? And you cannot cover everything just in 2 months. You have to give it time because whatever you're learning, you will definitely get confused. You will definitely feel there is a lot to learn. So at least 4 to 5 months is something that I would recommend anyone. Cool. I'll take some more questions towards the end or after this next step, which is the intermediate step. Okay, so let's move to the intermediate step. So we have in intermediate, we have these topics which I've listed down here, which are basically linked list. All of them are different data structures and different techniques that you need to learn to solve some problems. So linked list is something, if I can tell you with my experience, it is very important in terms of interviews again, because this can test your fundamental knowledge and fundamental understanding of programming, right? Or of a programming language. So linked list also, I'm not sure right now, but it was one of the favorite topics. Whenever someone had to take a DSA interview, it was one of the favorite topics for the interviewer. So they used to ask a lot of questions from linked list initially, right? So again, focus on linked list, try to understand the basics and fundamentals of how is this data structure working, why are we going to use that, and how are we using that. So linked list, again, the first topic here. Then you have stacks and queues. So stacks and queues is a topic which you can definitely relate with real world, right? Stacks and queues has some real, very relatable real life problems which are solved using stacks and queues. So these are the topics. There is something called a doubly-ended queue. Doubly-ended queue is not, I would say, the questions. There are not a lot of questions from this, but it can optimize. So when I say optimize, you can optimize some algorithms or some problems using doubly-ended queue. So this has some uh, techniques, or you can say this has some powers which can help you optimize your solution. So if you are someone who already know about stacks and queues, but you missed on this topic, right? Doubly-ended queues, because a lot of people do that. They miss out on this topic, DQs. So I would suggest that you go through it, at least know the fundamentals of this data structure. What is this and how do we use it? Then again, this topic, which is hashing or hash maps, are very important. It is used along with this topic, right? Hashing is used with along with many other data structures. It will help you again optimize your solution. When I say optimize, I mean make your program faster in a lot of ways with other data structures, right? So this can be used with other data structures to fasten your program, to run it very quickly, correct? So hashing is again very important. Two-pointer approach. So two-pointer approach, sliding window, greedy approach, these are all techniques which can help you to solve a problem, right? So there is no specific thing which anyone can teach you about these, but you can learn about these by solving problems, right? So I would recommend anyone who is um, trying to learn these techniques, go through a set of problems. You can find the problems in, so nowadays there are a lot of DSA sheets. I'm not sure how many of you are aware about that, but you can find DSA sheets where there are questions specified that you should, for this topic, for example, two-pointer approach, there is a set of questions, like there are 10 questions which you should solve, then you will be able to understand two-pointer approach, correct? So similarly, you can go and check out these DSA sheets. You will be able to find a lot of questions, and that will build your logic. That will help you build your understanding of these techniques, right? So the last topic in intermediate step is bit manipulation. So this is more about how are numbers stored in computer, right? This will let you understand, or this will make you understand about the functioning of a computer. How so the computer does not really understand anything except binary. It only understands 0 or 1, right? So bit manipulation is something that is related to that. It will help you understand how we can manipulate and how we can change numbers stored inside the computer, right? So again, very important topic in the intermediate step. So I think someone was asking about um, till which or how much DSS is important for interviews. So till intermediate step, right? Whatever topics we have discussed here are very important, because any company which is going to come will ask you at least till intermediate step. So that is why I would recommend that if you are beginning, then first of all, make sure that you know, you are confident with intermediate DSA. You are confident with all the topics till intermediate DSA, because without that, do not jump onto development. Do not jump onto any other thing. Make sure you are confident, and make sure you can code most of the questions from intermediate DSA. Correct. Okay. So yes, there are a lot of sheets. I can see in the chat box people are discussing about DSA sheets. I think there are multiple of them. Geeks for Geeks has their own sheet. There are some influencers which have their own sheets. So what you can do is go through them according to the difficulty level which suits you, right? Because all of them might have some different questions, and according to whatever difficulty level suits you, right? Some of them might be easy, some of them might be hard. You can choose one DSA sheet and then go through the whole of like follow that. Do not change sheets while learning DSA. Make sure when you choose a sheet, you follow that. That is very important, right? So this is the intermediate step, and then the fourth step which I have written, right? I did not go to the advanced step. Fourth step which I have written is revision and practice. So what one thing which I can tell you is, while I was learning and I have seen people whom I have taught, what I have seen is basically till this step there are a lot of topics, right? Even if I go to the intermediate step, you can see I think we have around 10 topics here, and similarly in the basic fundamental step, again we have 10 different topics. So 20 topics can get confusing, right? You might get confused if you do not revise regularly. You will get stuck at some point, and you will not be able to move forward because of lack of practice. So what I would recommend is that before moving forward, before doing anything else, step 4 should be revision and practice. Make sure whatever you are learning, you are revising it constantly. That is very important, and I cannot emphasize more on the revision part, because I remember myself when I was learning, I had I used to make notes of whatever I was learning, right, in DSA. So I had filled 4 notebooks, and those 4 notebooks I still have, right, because I used to revise them constantly. So please make sure that you revise and practice questions regularly. Don't jump onto the next topics. Make sure you are following this step religiously. Cool. So revision and practice is the fourth step. That is why I have mentioned it specifically in the different step. I have not just written it somewhere. I have specifically said that step 4 should be revision and practice. Cool. Now, if you have any questions, let me take them in the chat box. You can ask your question in the chat box. I'll be answering some of those. Does the interview ask you about time complexity? Correct. So one topic which should be covered in, which I think I missed in the fundamentals, was the time complexity, right? So there is a topic called time and space complexity analysis. So yes, you should learn that in the fundamentals, because every interviewer will ask you the time complexity. There's a question in the chat box: while solving a question, how much time should we spend if you are stuck on that question, right? So um, I would generally recommend not to spend a lot of time initially, at least. So if you are stuck on a problem, then spend 20-25 minutes, right? After that, move on to the next question, because 20-25 minutes is a good amount of time. So don't um, waste time on that question. Later on, what you can do is you can watch the solution. You can go and check the solution and then learn the concept, right? So that is what I would generally recommend. So initially, I also used to get stuck, right? So I also did the same thing. I followed the same thing. Give it 20 minutes. If you're not able to get to the solution, then move on to the next question. So how to improve problem solving skills, like while seeing a problem, how to get the thinking approach. So the question is, how do you improve your problem solving skills? Um, the only way to do that, or the only way which I know of, is by solving a lot of questions, right? The more questions you solve, the better you will get at problem solving. So I would recommend that practice is the only way by which you can improve the problem solving skills, and you will be able to see that when you practice a lot of questions, you will be able to solve other problems, right, faster. So there is no substitute for practice. Okay, there's a question for a non-tech student. Are topics such as DBMS, system design, operating system, etc., compulsory to know about, or DSA and basic development is enough? So see, at the entry level job, for example, let's say when I say entry level job, I say SD1 roles. For that, all these topics which you mentioned, especially system design, is not important, right? Fundamentals of DBMS, like fundamentals of what is SQL, and basics of operating system, like how does an operating system work, right? And what are the things that operating system does. The basics of that are important for you to, for any programmer to know, right? It is a good to have thing. No one is going to ask you those in the interviews, right? At least I have seen companies only focusing on DSA and development, but fundamentals, yes, you should know. You should be able to find some content on YouTube as well. But if you say, do you really have to dive deep on that? No. The answer is clearly no. Uh, you should not deep dive in these topics. So focus on DSA and development. That's it. Because why am I saying this is because the probability of a company asking this is very low. Out of 100, let's say 5 companies can ask this, but 95 companies will not focus on these topics. Okay. In interview, we are not provided with test cases. As we practice in different coding platform, we get test cases to help the approach. So how? Okay. The question is, in the interviews, we are not aware about the test cases, but when we are practicing questions, the test case we can see, right? We can see the example or sample test cases. So how do we do that in the interview? So you need to, again, one thing which I can guarantee you is, if you practice enough, right? If you have practiced enough questions, if you practice enough DSA, then you will be able to form your own um, test cases, right? Looking at the problem statement, you should be able to figure out and think of your own test case. Like, for example, you should be able to think, if I give this as an input to my program, what is the expected output, right? So this is very important, and this is one point where, again, interviewers test you. Can you come up with sample test cases yourself, right? This is a way of interviewers to, again, judge you on your DSL skills, correct? So I think, again, when you practice more and more questions, you should be able to uh, tackle this problem. DSA full form is data structures algorithms. Okay, one problem which I think, one question which I think is a good question. What if we don't get an answer to a problem in an interview? Like, for example, if an interview asks you a question and you're not able to come up with a solution. So see, generally what happens is, if you're not able to come up with a solution in an interview, um, what interviewer does is, generally they will try to help you. They'll try to give you some hints, right? They'll try to uh, guide you to the right path, guide you to come up with a solution. But if even if after the hints, if you're not able to come up with a solution, or you have chosen a wrong path, then what happens is generally interviewer, you can say that you are not able to think about this problem right now, correct? That is one way of approaching this problem, right? One way of telling the interview ki, right now I'm not able to figure out anything. So what interviewer will do is they will change the question. Correct. Generally, most of the interviewers are very helpful. So you should not be afraid of telling them anything, right? If there is anything which you feel, let's say if you're not confident, if you're facing some issue, so try to communicate that to the interviewer, because a lot of, I would say 99% of the interviewers will understand, correct? So if you're not able to come up with a solution, that's not a problem. Just make sure that you don't waste time on that problem. That is very important. Okay, let me just cover the final step, which is the advanced part, and then I will address the remaining questions, and then we can wrap up. Right. So in the advanced part, we have binary trees and binary search trees. Again, these are two topics. The companies like I have seen very good companies like fintech companies. If I am not, let's say Microsoft, DSA, right? DSA is a finance company. So these companies focus a lot on binary search trees and binary trees, and this is something that I experienced myself as well. Apart from these, binary trees is very important, as a lot of companies, if they're testing you based on your advanced skill, they will ask you questions based on binary trees in the online assessment. So you have your coding round before your interviews, where these topics are very important, because a lot of them will be able to, a lot of them will ask you these questions. So binary trees and graphs, right? These are the two topics which I feel that a lot of companies nowadays are focusing on. So make sure that whenever you're learning, you give enough time to these topics. Don't skip anything which you feel is important, right? And you're not able to understand it. Don't skip that part. Make sure that you learn it. Right? Give it as much time as possible. So when I say as much time, these two topics, binary trees and graphs, can take at least 1.5 months themselves to learn, right? Because these are very big topics, and the questions can be formed from a, variety of topics in these uh, graphs and binary trees. So make sure you give enough time and you do not skip them. Apart from this, DP, right, dynamic programming, um, it is being asked nowadays in interviews as well. So this is one of the, as I mentioned, this is a technique. This is not a data structure. So dynamic programming is a technique by which you can, again, optimize your solutions. So whenever someone is trying to optimize it, there are multiple ways of doing it. And one of the techniques of doing it is by using dynamic programming. So again, you have a variety of questions here. Even if you solve 100 questions, there can be a question framed which you will not be able to solve, right? So the only thing to do is practice enough so that you are able to think, and probability of you solving the question is high. Correct? So this is what practice will do. It will make you think, and it will help you to, it will increase your chances of solving that problem, right? So again, in advance, we have binary trees, binary search trees. We have priority queues, or also called as heaps, graphs, dynamic programming. Tries is something you can, if you really have time, then only go to this topic, which is the last two topics, which is tries and string algorithms, right? If you actually don't have enough time, then don't go to these topics, because these are really advanced. Right? The probability of anyone asking these questions or these topics is really low. Apart from the top companies, if you're sitting for or aiming for some companies which don't focus on advanced DSA, then you can definitely skip it, right? And again, the last step is, as I've mentioned, practice. DSA is nothing about practice. I have mentioned this. I have mentioned the word practice a lot of times now. So you should be able to figure out that okay, practice के बिना DSA नहीं होगा, right? So you have to practice. Make sure that you practice enough questions before your interview, because DSA is all about practice. So resources, again, basic resources which I can recommend are Lead Code and Interview Bit. These are the resources for your interviews. These will help you prepare for your interview. And apart from that, when you have to practice step-by-step questions, DSA sheets are really good, right? So you can definitely go to Lead Code and practice as well as follow DSA sheets. Personally, I have used Lead Code a lot, right? So I would recommend, if someone is preparing for interviews, you go and check out Lead Code if you haven't. Cool. I think I don't have anything else. This was the last thing which I wanted to discuss. So I'll just address a few questions for next 5-10 minutes, and then we can wrap up. Uh, so there's a question: what is important? Is it DSA? Sorry, the question is, what is importance of DSA in web development? So see, if you're a backend programmer, even if you are using modern day technology like React, right? There is some basic knowledge or basic understanding of programming and logic building required there. So that is where DSA can help you. DSA is not something that you will definitely use in day-to-day life. What happens is DSA will help you to form logic, right? It will make your logic stronger, like it will help you to solve problems and build the logic for that faster. So that is why I recommend everyone to learn fundamental DSA at least before going to development. So importance of DSA in web development is that it can help you understand the code better and optimize certain things which you might not be able to do that if you don't know DSA. Um, how to clear online contests for big companies? See, this question, how to clear, is very simple. Again, these companies ask questions based on DSA, and generally what they do is they ask questions based on advanced DSA. As I mentioned in the advanced step, so you have these topics like binary trees, graphs, and dynamic programming. These are really important when it comes to online contest or online assessment. So focus on them. I think you should be able to clear the coding round. But again, when you're coming to advanced part, don't skip the intermediate, right? Don't just start learning about graphs without knowing what stacks, queues are. That will not make sense. So make sure that you follow step-by-step procedure. Don't jump on to advanced directly. Um, Easy. I'm able to solve easy problems on lead code, but not medium. So I would recommend that. See, nowadays for lead code or as well, you can find the solutions, right? You can find solutions on YouTube. So if you're not able to come up with a solution, what I would recommend is you give it enough time, right? Try to solve it. Let's say try to come up with a solution for 20-25 minutes. If not, then go to YouTube and search for that. I think you should be able to find a solution. And once you're able to find a solution, make sure you write it somewhere, you note it down somewhere and revise it after a week or so, right? So in these scenarios, whenever you learn something new, make sure you note it down and then revise it. Okay, there's a question: what data structures were asked or what topics were asked in Google interviews? I don't remember exactly, but I think hashing. So hash maps were asked in one of the interviews. Other interviews also involved. questions from graphs. So I think these are the topics which I remember. I think a couple of more questions which I don't remember, but hashing and graphs, these were asked to me. Again, everyone is asked different set of questions, so this is not generalized, but yeah. How much basic of a programming language is important to move to DSA? So when I say fundamentals of programming language, that involves, if else statements. So basically conditionals. You should be able to declare variables. You should be able to use them, print them. You should be able to take input from the user. And apart from that, using for loops, while loops, and conditionals. That's it. So these are the fundamentals that you should be very clear about. Where do we get practice problem on DS data structures? So there are multiple platforms, right? As I mentioned, one of them is LeetCode. But if you are a very beginner, if you want to practice topic by topic questions, then Geeks for Geeks is a very good platform. Apart from that, you also have HackerRank. So I have used both of them, HackerRank and Geeks for Geeks. It's up to you, whatever you want to use. Okay, there's a question. I'm working in MERN stack, which development. Could you suggest which programming language I need to choose for DSA? See, if you're working in MERN stack, then I'm assuming you are already aware about JavaScript. But for DSA, I would not recommend going ahead with JavaScript. Again, there's nothing wrong in learning DSA in JavaScript. The concepts will be the same. But personally, I would recommend that you go ahead with Java, right? Don't take any risk, because I have seen certain companies where they will only allow you to write code in only, let's say, 3 programming language, right? For example, I don't remember the name of the company, but in our college, one of the companies asked us to write code only in Python, C, or Java. That's it. Even C++ was not allowed, right? Either you have to write code in C, Java, or Python, right? So there can be some constraints. So Java is one of the safest choice when it comes to DSA. Yeah, C++ is a good language again, um, for DSA. If you are trying to solve questions, then definitely you will find a lot of resources in C++. So there is a question: what is time complexity and why is it necessary? So see, time complexity is basically, so if I give you a basic example, let's say there are two applications, right? One is YouTube 1 and the other one is YouTube 2, right? There are two applications. Both of them, YouTube 1 and YouTube 2, both of them do the same thing. They will load the video and it will play on the screen. But let's say YouTube 1 plays the video in 1 second, correct? And YouTube 2, anytime you play the video, it will take 10 seconds, right? So which one will you prefer? Which one will you prefer when it comes to using a software? Will you prefer YouTube 1 or YouTube 2? Again, YouTube 1 is taking 1 second, YouTube 2 is taking 10 seconds. Can you write in the chat box what will you prefer? Correct, correct. So people writing 1, right? So basically, see, when we say that YouTube 1, why is that? Because it is faster, right? It is faster and it will provide better experience. Therefore, time complexity is a thing which can help us determine this. Which algorithm is faster, which application or which software is faster and better. That is what time complexity can do, help us. So that is why it is necessary that any code you write, you should be able to come up with the time complexity. Like, again, there are techniques to calculate it, so you can learn about that. Okay, there is a question: should we write all the languages in the resume which we have studied basics? No. So when it comes to resume, see, learning basics or fundamentals of a programming language is not that difficult, right? Only write those programming languages which you are comfortable. If you have used Python in some project, let's say 2 years ago, and you do not remember it, then don't write that. So if I ask you a question from that programming language, you should be able to answer that. So only write those languages which you are comfortable in. How much pointer should I learn? I am every day stuck on pointer. Which things are important to learn in pointers? So pointers can be confusing. I understand that. Not really. See, it is not. Uh, the concept of pointers is not there in Java, right? It is there in C and C++. So basics of pointers you should be able to understand what is a pointer and how can we use them in our code. That is important. That's it. I don't focus on. I have seen a lot of problems which are really confusing, right? Which will involve some technicalities of. They will ask what is this address, what is this. Those are not important. So just the basics of it, like how can you code, how can you use them in our code. That is important. So there's a question. I belong to mechanical engineering background. Any tips for non-IT students? So one thing which I would suggest is, see, because you are from non-IT background, um, you have to work a bit harder than the other people who are already from IT background, correct? So I would recommend that initially you spend uh, extra time understanding the basics, right? Because if you understand the basics, then you will have a very smooth journey compared to people who don't understand the basics. So if you are from non-IT background and starting off, then please initially you have to work a bit harder to understand and to catch up with those who already have some background of programming. But it is no big deal, right? Just a half an hour to 1 hour extra work, you will be able to, um, you know, do as good as any other person. Cool, oh, cool. Okay, one more last question and then we can wrap up. So, can we get referral from tier work companies if you have good command on trees, graph, TP recursion? Um, yes. So whoever has asked this question, the answer is yes, right? You can definitely get referrals, but again, for you to get referrals, what is important, right? Since the person who is giving you referral does not know you, you have to have some credibility, correct? And how do you become credible is basically you build your profile. So I would suggest that if you want to crack, top-notch companies, then build some coding profiles and use them to get interviews, right? So there are some platforms like, again, Lead Code here. You have some other platforms where profile building, if you have a good profile, it it can showcase that you are good in DS, right? So make sure that you build your profile and then definitely get a referral and sit for interview. Is it possible to do DSA in Node.js? I mean, when you say Node.js, I'm assuming you're saying JavaScript. It is possible to learn DSA in JavaScript, but again, as I mentioned, it is not recommended. So it would be better if you could learn Java or C++ and then start DSA. Sure. So if you have any other doubts, right, I won't be able to answer everyone. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. So you can connect with me. My name is Parv, and you can ask questions there. I'll be, I'll see if I can help. Definitely, I'll be able to help you. Right. Um, I hope this was a useful session for everyone. And if you have any doubt regarding the session, if you have any feedback, definitely you can connect with me on LinkedIn, and then I'll be able to help you. Cool. Then everyone have a very good evening. See you all next time. Uh, keep learning DSA, keep coding. See you all. Bye.